we go.
All right.
Well, hello, my wonderful office workplace warriors, and welcome back to another episode of Dear HR Diary by Manage with Heart, the unfiltered truth you wish you learned in management school. And the plot continues. I swear, this is like an everyday thing. The tagline actually was invented by someone that thought it was funny, and it just has really stuck with me. I've recorded 75 episodes, and I still wish I'd learned more in management school than I've learned. Well, today I'm super excited because I have gasped like grip your pearls, ladies. I've got an attorney. I know I've had lots of requests for attorneys on the show, so I'm super excited to have Brian Williams. He is a distinguished trial lawyer who has served as lead counsel in high stakes trials across California. For all you HR California people, Nevada. His practice centers on cases involving sexual abuse, physical assault, employment litigation. Listen, all you employers out there, and severe injury and wrongful death. Many of Brian's cases command widespread media coverage with frequent features on major television networks and in prominent news publications. Driven by a commitment to justice, Brian brings his clients' stories to the forefront, using his platform to amplify critical issues and make a lasting impact. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. And I loved your title, by the way. It's one of the things that caught my attention when I first learned of your podcast. It reminds me of, like, when you have a kid, no one teaches you how to be a parent first, right? You think growing up, but then all of a sudden you're a parent and you have to learn. So it's a great title.
As a kid, don't you say, I'm not going to be a parent like my parent? And then you turn out like 75%
I'm
of the stuff
so
that your
much
parents
like
do.
my oh my God. Yeah.
I have 5 kids. You would have thought I learned.
I'm with you. I've got 4, so you got me beat by 1, but
oh my gosh,
learning every day.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I have to know kind of law. So you became an attorney, so that's pretty exciting. Where did you go to law school? Just a random question.
Sure. I went to a school called Chapman University School of Law. It's in Orange County, California, which has been my hometown. So quite frankly, I went there because it was close and they offered me a very significant scholarship and I was broke. So I was drawn to that school. And in hindsight, it was one of the best choices I ever made because I wasn't saddled with student loan debt when I got out.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So what fascinated you about law?
So I'm a competitive person. I like to argue and I like to win, so it's like growing up, I like to play a lot of sports. And then I realized, as I got into high school that I didn't have the athletic ability to ever make money playing sports. And so, I met some lawyers and I actually worked with a law firm when I was still in business school because I did have a business degree. Mm-hmm. And I saw this competitive aspect of litigation and going to trial that reminded me of sort of the thrill of being an athlete. Okay. And so it fit and it's stuck ever since. I love it. It's got its ups and downs for sure, but it's been a great choice for me.
Okay. And now what made you decide to handle, the plaintiff side?
Sure. So the great question. I spent years, I had my own defense law firm, billing by the hour, doing all kinds of cases. And I found myself not enjoying the law anymore. I found myself more focused on, trying to help insurance carriers or these large institutions keep money from people that, at least thought that they rightfully deserved it. And I wanted to switch sides and work on behalf of individuals to help, do my part to make a meaningful difference in their life. It started with representing survivors of childhood sexual abuse. That's something I'm very, very passionate about. As I told you, I'm a father of 4, and the fact that that kind of abuse still occurs in our society, at schools, churches, everything else. It was very easy for me to get passionate. Told you I was competitive.
Yeah.
So that was sort of what drew me to the actually making the decision logistically to switch sides. And then it's just broadened from there. And I don't see myself ever going back.
That's fascinating. Okay, so my brother-in-law is an attorney. He's a JAG attorney. He's now a federal judge, immigration judge. So he retired from the Air Force and is doing immigration. So it's kind of interesting because I'm like, so you just send people back? He's like, pretty much. He's like, no asylum for you.
But yeah, I mean, he's obviously very good at what he does. I mean, that's quite the background to be a JAG and then go to a federal
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Impressive.
So,
Yeah.
and then I have another attorney brother-in-law that actually is legal counsel for is it oil and gas in Dubai? So a really large oil and gas company in Dubai. So just kind
Yeah.
of really fascinating. Then I marry a banker. So I come from a family of attorneys, and then my husband's like, maybe I should have been a lawyer. Anyway, funny story. Now,
Sure.
as an HR professional, and I know not everybody listens to my podcast that is in HR. I have employees, I have managers, I have HR people. I have people that kind of do all three, like I do. Um, what are some things that kind of, as a plaintiff attorney, you really worry about, or you really are concerned about the well-being or the welfare of employees' rights?
Geez, there's a lot. And I think it depends on what state you're in too, right? I
Yeah.
mean, every state is different. Every state's law is different. But,
Mhm.
fundamentally, if you ignore the black letter of the law, so to speak, employees should be treated fairly.
Yeah.
Just like, again, I opened with the reference to childhood sexual abuse, but just like that shouldn't occur in society, neither should age discrimination, neither should sexual harassment, neither should disability discrimination, things like that. I think deeply rooted in all of those claims is what's just, what's right, and what's
Mhm.
fair. And there's no place in any workforce, I don't think I'd find anyone to disagree, that allows for or condones discrimination of any sort.
Yeah. Or if they're turning a blind eye to it, that speaks to the culture of the company. And I know I have worked in organizations, or even as a consultant, have worked with some companies that have unfortunately turned a blind eye to that. And it's resulted in some litigation, as well as some employees that have suffered long-term consequences from it. PTSD being one of them, or
Sure.
lack of self-confidence, or really kind of self-esteem has been eroded because they've just been, you know, boxed into this hole where it's like it will, no one supports it, everyone turns an eye to it, even HR ignores it. So what am I supposed to do?
No, you raise a very good point, both in terms of how these kinds of events can impact people, but the fact that there are still cover-ups and blind eye turning going on every day, including right now as we're talking. And it astonishes me sometimes, right? I mean, obviously, if you get to the point where there's a cover-up, that means something improper happened to begin with, right?
Right.
So to me, what could be worse on behalf of an employer than taking something that already went tragically wrong and making it worse by trying to sweep it under a rug or even condoning it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and allowing it to perpetuate and continue. And you use the word culture, and I'm sure we'll talk about culture a lot, but
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. I mean, it says a lot about a company and its leaders when someone who is treated unfairly or discriminated against, whatever it might be, um, is almost punished and
Mm-hmm.
for speaking out. And then rather than doing the right thing and reacting to that person speaking out, they cover it up.
Yeah.
It shouldn't happen. And
Absolutely.
lawyers like me are out there to prevent it from happening and to make sure that you hold companies that do it accountable, because I think that's what leads to hopefully lasting change.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they hide behind their policy. It's like, and they become this like very black and white organization when it's like, well, this is what the policy says. And I'm like, okay, listen, I am not a black and white human being, and I don't know anybody on the planet that is a black and white human being. People are, I always joke, I came from HR. I ended up in HR through training. And so I am one of those people that didn't go to school for HR. I went to school of hard knocks of HR
Yeah,
and kind of
right,
learned
right.
that
Learning on the
way.
fly.
Yeah. And in 1994, 30 years ago, when I got into HR, I worked for an organization that very much was a good old boys club in
Hmm.
Texas, and sexual harassment occurred every day. And in fact, it was kind of a well known fact that it was going on. And as an new to HR, I didn't understand how to prevent it, how to stop it, what to do. And then it was very much like I got to the point that I had to walk away from a company that I really, really liked, because I was seeing women, and it was women because this was 94. So predominantly women. This was a situation where women were being completely mistreated, and they weren't part of the good old boys club. And therefore, nothing was being done. And it was, quite tragic.
Yeah, and even in 2024, that still exists on, I can tell you firsthand. But you made a really good point about hiding behind policies and the fact that you don't do it and that most people don't. And what I would say to everyone out there too is that jurors don't. as
Yeah.
well. You know what I mean? Like if your defense on a case relies on trying to convince 12 people or whatever your individual state might have that, well, the letter of my policy says this, they don't care.
Yeah.
They're going to look at it because most jurors are employees themselves, or at least were at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be like, did you treat that person fairly? Did you do what was right? Um, I don't want to see what your policy says. I want to see how
Yeah.
you acted and how you treated that individual employee.
What are you seeing kind of more complaints coming to you? Are you seeing more age discrimination? Are you seeing more Americans with disabilities? Are you seeing, I mean, you're in California and I'm assuming some Nevada stuff. So
Yeah.
that's kind of, no offense against California, but a little bit of the wild, wild west out there. And I joke about never practicing HR in California, and I did for 6 years. I was like, oh. So, kind of what are you seeing more of? Is there an influx?
I mean, I see it all. I would say if I had to spot a trend, I think disability discrimination would be one of them. And
Okay.
that doesn't just mean, disability discrimination in the strictest sense. I would expand it to be, FMLA leave
Oh,
issues,
yeah.
or just not, frankly, knowing how to respond to requests for accommodations, things of that sort. I think there's a lot of cases being filed throughout both California and Nevada, and we do have an office in New York too, that cover the concept of how to treat a disabled employee, because disability is very, very broad under the
Yeah.
law. Um, so that would be one. I think wage and hour is always a huge issue. It's not quite as big as what it once was. I think there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of lawyers, particularly in California, in Nevada, that practice in the wage and hour context. So that's certainly a trend. And then I think there's trends in jury verdicts as opposed to just topics.
Yeah.
Jury verdicts are up on cases in which, employers do the wrong thing. And they should be, quite frankly, because it's those kind of verdicts that lead to change. But, you have an aging workforce at this
Mm-hmm.
point, at times. So age discrimination cases get particular attention to it. And just, again, California is a great state in the context of employee rights.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the goal of that is to eliminate,
Absolutely.
unfairness and inadequate treatment or improper treatment.
Yeah, and not to bash California. I love California, but and they lead a lot of great they lead a lot of great employee policies, quite frankly. It's they were the ones that really started kind of along with New York started wage transparency. They, equal rights, equal pay rights, really pushed on that. FMLA paid FMLA. I live in a state that follows federal and nothing ever changes in this crazy state. And it's kind of sad, quite frankly. Minimum wage in the state of Oklahoma is $7.25. I don't know who can survive on that. I think that's ridiculous. I also am really liking the fact that, speaking of disability, that they went back and changed the law to reflect mental health, which was never really, it was kind of glazed over. But you have a generation, particularly millennials and Gen Zs, that stick up their hand and say, I'm suffering from mental health issues. Like, I'm depressed. I have panic disorder. I have PTSD or whatever. And I know with kind of your childhood victims or your children or your women that you defend as well, there's going to be some mental health that goes into that
Absolutely.
survivor situation. And they're going to bring that into the workforce. So I really applaud the fact that the ADA made those changes. I don't know, 10 years ago, was it 2014, that they made those changes to really encompass mental health. What I have seen is exactly what you said. Employers don't know how to make that leap. How do we accommodate mental health? Do we have to like put them in a dark room with no light? And it's almost becomes a little bit sassy where people are like, oh my gosh, she's just going to go take a Xanax and a nap. And I'm like, okay, well, if that makes her feel better and she's a
Right.
better able to perform, let's let her take her, 2-hour nap and Xanax and have her come back. So I almost think we're being, as employers, we are being pushed in a good way. And I support this. We're being pushed to think of ways to become more employee friendly. And it's sometimes somewhat hard for employers because they're like, well, how much is that going to cost us? Or I really need my employees in here or whatever. I mean, is there a way to really kind of convince employers that we're making these changes for the benefit of your employee, which will impact you as an employer?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of them. First off, in response to what it costs to learn and adapt to all these changes, what I would say is it costs a lot less than defending a lawsuit,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if you look at it overall, you're much better off to be proactive as opposed to responsive to when claims are made. But yeah, I think you're exactly right that the law is complicated, particularly if you're an employer that has offices in multiple states. I mean, if you think about it, yeah, I'm an employment lawyer. It's one of the things I do, but I'm also the managing partner of a law firm that has 4 offices in 3 different states.
Oh, yeah.
And anyone that thinks that it's easy to navigate these laws, I think is misplaced. I have an outside labor lawyer and I practice employment law, and I have a practice group of lawyers that work for me that only do employment law. Yet when I have my own employment issues, I call someone else.
Yeah.
Because one, I want an unbiased, emotionally attached person giving me advice. But two, because the law changes a lot. There's interactions, as you've mentioned, between both federal and state laws, and then different state laws if you're crossing state lines. Consult with someone, and you'll make better decisions, and thus you'll treat your employees better and fair, which is my goal, at least, right? I mean, as human beings, we spend so much of our waking time at work that we deserve to be treated fairly in accordance with the law, and we deserve to enjoy coming to work. Finally, sort of getting to one of your question is, I think every employer, I know I do, should invest in culture.
Yeah.
And should invest in the quality of the experience that you're providing your employees. I think it reminds me of the saying, happy wife, happy life, right?
Yeah.
Well, happy employees equal productive employees. It equals engaged employees. Doesn't mean you have to be their friend, and let them get away with everything that they want, but engage your team and keep them happy, and they will be productive.
I also think when you talk culture and you talk about engage your employees and be involved, I think treating your employees right is a good culture, right? So if you're treating your employees right,
shouldn't be a novel concept either, right? Like, wait a minute, yeah, of course.
It's like that aha moment. Oh my gosh, I should treat my employees like, I don't know, adult.
I heard someone once say that when an employee clocks in between the hours of 8 and 5, I own them. And I thought that is such a ridiculous statement. Now, fortunately, that was someone that I was suing, and it made for a very good case for me. But that mindset, no, you don't. You're paying them for their time, but you still have to treat them right. And why wouldn't you? First, on a human level, why wouldn't you want to treat your employees right? But two, if you do, and you reward them, and you engage them, and you make them feel committed to the same goals that you as an institution have, the rewards are far greater than just the cost of.
I love that. My daughter's car broke down last Friday before last, and I was stuck on the side of the road in a college town. She took my car, I took hers. Hers broke down. I was on the way to the shop anyway, but I was about 45 minutes away from the shop.
The things we do for our kids, right?
I know, it's crazy. Yeah. So I'm stuck on the side of the road, and I call. It's the afternoon, so it wasn't late. And unfortunately, my husband was out of town, so I'm like, okay, now what do I do? So I'm a grown adult. What do I do? I Google tow truck, and so I get a tow truck. He pulls up. His name is Mo. Mo's this big burly guy. First, he comes around and he knocks on my window because my window was up, and he flashed at me his ID, so I knew who he was. And then he said he was here and asked me, to get out of the car. He said, however, wait until this traffic passes by. So wait until I signal you to get out of the car because I want you to be safe. And I'm like, what the heck? So he said, and then go around on the passenger side, and my car's open. There's a bottle of water there for you. If you need anything, a charger's in the glove compartment. Like, very, very kind. And I'm like,
yeah, absolutely.
Who is this guy?
Right.
All by himself. Hooks my car up, and he said, do I need to take you to the dealer or take you to the car place? And I said, that would be fantastic. He's like, okay. I wasn't sure. He said, if you were waiting on an Uber, I wait until the Uber comes, and so you could get off on your own. And I'm like, okay, who's this guy? So we have this conversation, and he's been with this tow truck company for 5 years. And because I'm shy and I'm an employer and I like to ask questions, I'm like, so you've been a tow truck driver for so long. Why do you stay there? And he said, listen, I love the culture of my company. My job is incredibly risky. I am a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week tow truck driver. I pick people up on the side of the road at 2 o'clock in the morning in sketchy neighborhoods. I work alone. I have to pull the cars up on the tow truck. It is very taxing. It is very labor intensive. However, I meet you when you're in some really, really crappy circumstance. Your car just broke down. And he said, and I ultimately want to treat you like a human being. And I'm like, wow, that's amazing. And he said, and what's great about that is that's how my company feels. My company wants us treated like human beings. So we treat our customers like human beings. And he said,
Oh,
the culture here is phenomenal. It's a tow truck job and I work on commission, but I stay at this company. He said, I could go out and start my own company. I could go to work at in fact, other companies are constantly asking me to come work for them, but I stay because of the culture of the organization and they treat us right. And I'm like, wow, how great is that? And you just think that's just amazing. And he said, what's really great about it is I'm a second chance. I'm a second chance hire. I went to jail. I went to prison. And this company took a chance on me. And I will always be very appreciative of what they've given me and my fellow coworkers.
yeah. That the story is amazing and it's great. And it emphasizes, obviously the importance of culture, whether it's a law firm or a tow truck company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a saying that you can make culture your competitive advantage as a
Mm.
business and as a way to differentiate yourself from the competition. And I think your story is a perfect example. I'm guessing, Don, that if you ever are in a situation where a car breaks down again, you're going to single out and try to find that exact same company.
Yeah.
By the way he treated you in that conversation that you have, they have a customer for life. And hopefully you won't need one, but
Yeah. Let's
right.
hope
I mean, it's a one-time thing or a two-time
yeah.
thing. And I think the same thing as an attorney. There are a lot of attorneys out there that people can call. But if the people in my firm can create a situation where you're their attorney for life and you're the first one top of mind that they think of when they have a problem, that means that you did something right.
Yeah.
And having a culture in which people are advocates for not just themselves, but for the firm or for the company, to me is crucial.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's one of the things that if you treat people right, they're going to do right for you too. So
Absolutely.
100%. Okay. So I have to ask, do you have like one really fun story that you can share with us? Like a
Fun
good,
story.
juicy employment law story that like you were surprised at the treatment or what the situation was? Is there like
Oh,
something
man.
good that you can share?
Yeah. How long is your podcast on? No, I mean, I get presented with some stories that, we have a saying in my office that, I never thought that this stuff would happen or this can't be true, right? Anytime we start a sentence like that, we know, it's a good case. And it
Yeah.
happens every day. I'll tell you that again, initially I focused a lot of my attention on sexual assault cases.
Mm-hmm.
And what that led to was almost unintentionally was I was started getting a lot of people who were assaulted at work. And
Oh
then
gosh.
which becomes sexual harassment, right? And in addition to being sexual abuse or sexual assault, it's actually, a labor code violation or a
Yeah.
violation of some state law about sexual harassment. It amazes me what supervisors do. And they are typically, males, and I'm one, and it's shameful to female employees and think they're going to get away with it. Like it ceases to amaze me that just, someone could think that I can walk up to my, whatever, administrative assistant and basically say, if you don't do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to fire you, or you're not going to get promoted. Those aren't just stories made up in law school books or that we hear,
Or those cheesy harassment videos that we show.
yeah, the cheesy harassment videos or some scene in a movie. Done, it happens every day. It really does. And, what the unfortunate part of that is it happens much more than we know because statistically, people who are exposed to that kind of sexual assault or sexual harassing conduct, most of them stay quiet.
Yeah.
Right? Most of them just put their head down and think, I can't say anything because I need this job and I can't go anywhere. And those that do speak up, call lawyers like me and hopefully you create change. But specific stories, yeah, we need a lot more time for that. I think one thing I'd give you is, we talked about age discrimination. And I had a case once where, it's very, very clear cut a discrimination case. And, of course, the employer disagreed with what the employees were saying. And, everyone out there should keep optics in mind. And, in this particular case, all you had to do was flash up pictures of those that were let go and compare them to pictures of those that were hired in their place. And, you don't need a lawyer that can talk a lot to explain what happened. A picture says 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
Be careful with optics because it really does matter.
Okay, I have two things I want to ask you about. First one I want to ask is, how do you see bullying fall into, is it sexual harassment? Is it, and I only ask that because I'm seeing bullying complaints come to me, and I get a lot from my further HR people. They're like, how do we handle bullying complaints? Like, it's, this person is just an ass to me, or is just rude, or is just condescending, or is, sabotaging my work, or is taking all the credit, everything that really kind of schoolyard bully. They're not necessarily pulling on your ponytail or pushing you off the swing, but they're doing things that demonstrate bullying behavior.
Yeah, great question. First off, as a disclaimer, state by state, the answer to this question is going to differ, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm not giving legal advice. I'm talking about very broad concepts here.
This is not a legal advice podcast.
I've handled a lot of bullying cases, particularly in the context of schools with young kids and whatnot. And I do think it's making its way into the employment environment, and how each state is going to address it. I think it's going to change. I actually think that this is something that's going to become kind of a evolving area of employment law. I think there's a notion that, employer doesn't have to be nice to people. It should, for all the reasons that we discussed, right? Culture or whatnot. But there's no law that says you have to be nice to every one of your employees. But then, you obviously can't treat an employee differently because of a protected class, right? So age, sex, religion, anything, right? Socioeconomic status, you name the protected class. Where I'm interpreting the question is the middle road there, or they don't quite overlap. Like, someone is being bullied or mistreated, but it's not because they're a male, or it's not because they're African-American, or it's not because they're pregnant, or whatever it might be. It's just that they're routinely picked on and mistreated by a particular employee. There are certain state law causes of action that might, help that employee. But, again, I just go back to how I would evaluate a case like that was what happened wrong? Did the employer handle the situation correctly, or did they sweep it under the rug?
Yeah.
And whether you can be held liable as an employer, I hope so. And I'm going to try. I think employers need to realize that you promote what you tolerate.
Yeah.
So for bullying type of behavior, if you allow the same person to continually get away with it, again, a very broad sense, then I think you should be held liable. And if you can't now, I think you will be in the future.
That's it. I was working with a management client of mine who called to ask me kind of how to handle a situation. They had recently promoted someone to a higher level, and they were treating all of the employees just like crap, just making inappropriate comments, just not a nice human being. And eventually this senior level person was terminated. Well, they had had 4 or 5 people kind of walk off the job, and they had had really, really low turnover until this senior manager was put into this role. And the manager said, I don't know what to do. I don't know why this turnover is happening. And I said, well, kind of tell me what's going on. And they were talking me through it. And then finally it came down to the point that this person had been promoted. This person had always had this really kind of crappy bullying type of behavior. This person got promoted and was continuing to have that type of behavior. And the crew, or the staff, the team actually was like, we're done. And then the manager called some of those people and were like, why'd you leave? And they said, well, because you promoted that person to senior manager. So that's exactly what you're saying. You promoted this person. So we assumed because you promoted them, you knew what they were doing, and therefore you supported that type of behavior. And it was almost this aha moment that this manager was like, oh my gosh, well, how do I regain trust? And I said, well, the fact that you called them to ask them why they left, you're probably already starting to regain that trust. So it was, how to build that. So really quickly, I know as we start wrapping this up, but I could like talk to Brian all day. We could spend time just kind of talking about all kinds of aspects. I'm fascinated with employee law. I'm too
Okay.
old to go back to law school, but working in HR has been fun because I get to see that aspect of it, and I
Sure.
get to see application, which is also fascinating. Like case law fascinates me. I always love to go to the HR law updates because I'm always like, oh, what happened then? So you see
Right,
the
right.
cases, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. Um,
Sure.
so, how do you see social media kind of playing a role in employers and employees' visibility? Because I could only imagine that one really massive lawsuit or whatever makes it to TikTok, makes it to Facebook, insert your social media here of choice, and it explodes. So, kind of, how do you see that playing a role?
Yeah, so I'll answer that in two ways. First, I think social media, you're right, it gets a lot of attention. And if an employer is thinking about making a decision that might lead to a lawsuit, they should do so with the understanding that lawyers like me will exploit, the additional media coverage and attention that social
Mm,
media can bring. Because and exploit is too harsh of a word, but that's something that everyone needs to keep in mind because it's a reality in our life that you can hardly file any kind of case, particularly against, an institution that has a notable name without it getting attention.
yeah.
I think the employee side of that is really social media is awareness.
Hmm.
Social media is a way for employees to know what their rights are. And I think that's really important. It's something that I try to do on my firm's own social media posts and through a lawsuit that I fought. A lot of it is just we do it to bring attention to the individual case, but more so to bring attention to the problem that led to that particular case. And the more that employees are aware of what their rights are and what is okay and what is not okay, I think the better society is, the better employment uh, places of employment are, and the more fair they are.
Yeah. It's such a magnifying glass nowadays.
It is.
You got that canceled culture, or you have that, you won't believe what Delta did. They, kicked me off a plane and then it like goes viral and now you're doing damage control as an employer when it's like, if you had done the right thing in the first place, probably wouldn't have to,
Right.
probably
And I
wouldn't be
think
doing damage control.
Right. It kind of comes back to the whole idea of culture, right? I mean, I think if you are an employer that, like, I hope our firm is, that promotes a healthy culture with for your employees, there are less likely to be viral moments on
Mhm.
social media, right? You're just because of the way you operate and the way you have middle level managers and everyone else involved in building that sort of unity or the idea of being a team and everyone in this together, I think the more likely you are to be part of an adverse social media campaign.
In a good way, you want them to be part of the good team, not the team that wants to sue you team.
Yeah, I mean,
Misery
right,
loves company kind of thing.
right, right.
Well, good. So, Brian, what's one little tidbit that you'd like to leave with the listeners today?
Geez, know your rights. Again, I know that I'm speaking to people on management, but even management gets
Yeah.
mistreated by upper level management. I think that it's very important for employees, regardless of what their position is, to know what the law is, and not from a lawyer standpoint, but to know what is right and what's not right. And the
Hmm.
more educated our workforce is, both from management level to an executive level to the lowest level that you have in an individual company, the better society is, the more fair our workplaces are.
Absolutely. So know your rights. And I also think it's important as a manager to know your employees' rights as well as kind of what your employer does too. So it's important to know both sides as
Yeah,
well, because if you're
absolutely.
knowing both sides, then you can support your employees and you can stand up to the employer and say, we're not doing this. This isn't the way that we should be functioning. So awesome. Well, thanks, Brian. This has been so much fun. I've really enjoyed, I personally enjoy this kind of stuff. So it's always fascinating to me, but I appreciate your time today. And to all my fabulous listeners out there, stay fabulous until next time.